Well, we're back again. We're going to talk about segment 3, and this is segment 3 for chapter 3. We talked in the last segment about the demand curve, the demand schedule, quantity demanded being different than a shift in demand, because quantity demanding is the quantities and prices, or quantity and price combinations as we shift or slide up and down that demand curve. And we said that it was basically price and quantity combinations holding all other things equal. Again, we're invoking ceteris paribus, nothing else changes, all other things equal. It simplifies the model. And even though it is a simplified model, it's extremely valuable for economists, and not only economists, but anybody trying to understand the concept of demand. And we'll also have some factors unchanged in supply, and we'll get into that a little later. But again, we're talking about just the quantity demanding at any given price level as we slide up and down along that demand curve. But now we're going to talk about what happens when the demand curve itself actually shifts. As it increase in demand will slide that curve to the right, a decrease in demand will slide that curve to the left. And what's going to happen? As that curve slides, it's going to provide a new demand curve that will have a new demand schedule. It will have a new demand curve with different quantities demanded along that demand curve at different price levels, whether it slides to the right or whether it slides to the left. It's going to have an impact, and we'll see later on the impact on the equilibrium price, but it's going to have a different impact on both prices and quantities as it slides along either the increase or the decrease in that demand curve as it slides one direction or the other. And for the most part, prices, as I said, all other things equal, that's a shifter that's going to be a huge determinant, not only the quantity demanded, but how that demand curve shifts. And let's just take COVID. So during COVID, there were a lot of issues with certain commodities, eggs, one of them, toilet paper, paper products in general, paper towels, napkins, those kind of things. And what you saw was an increase in price. And what we ended up, that increase in price, that actually, while the demand was there and you had people that would hoard some of those products, when it came to foodstuffs, you found people that were actually shifting the demand. So as the price of those eggs went up, and I can tell you, my wife and I both, we stopped eating as many eggs. My wife stopped cooking and using recipes that call for a lot of eggs. To us, the price of eggs shifted that demand curve, at least our demand curve, it shifted it downward because we just didn't have the decrease in, we had the decrease in use of eggs, so that caused that shift. Overall, the shift shifted downward as people started, looking at other commodities to use. So price is a significant driver, and it's a significant demand shifter in really any market economy. And it doesn't matter really what's going on with a lot of other of these shifters. It's you're really focused on the price of the good or service. And then we talk about preferences and information. And they make a comment in the text that taste shift slowly. And I can agree with that. I'm not a coffee drinker. My wife is, but I'm not. I just don't particularly I don't like the taste of coffee. Don't like the taste of really any hot drink, but coffee in general. But I see as coffee prices go up, I will see her gradually shift her taste to tea, or a taste to hot chocolate, or a taste to other drinks, especially in the morning for breakfast. Same thing with my wife really enjoys orange juice, but as the price of oranges go up, and it becomes a commodity, that she may shift to grapefruit juice or cranberry juice or some other kind of juice. So taste change slowly, information changes rapidly. And that's something, as we talked about on the last segment, we are bombarded constantly by new information on the internet. Some of it's rumors, some of it's accurate, some of it's kind of halfway in between. You never know really what to expect, or from my perspective, what to believe as far as information on the internet, but you are constantly getting bombarded by that information. And let's just take healthcare. You are constantly reading new information about healthcare. Something came by on the internet the other day about, I guess, the Nile virus in mosquitoes. Well, it comes out every year that, mosquitoes population is increasing, and higher probability of Nile virus in certain parts of the United States. So you're going to be looking at that and thinking, okay, here in the state of Georgia, mosquitoes are pretty rampant. So maybe I need to go out and hire a mosquito spray service to come in and take care of the potential mosquito population. So you've got all of this information bombarding you. You don't want to end up with a healthcare issue. So it's not just that, it's information about, as we talked earlier in one of the other segments, about as a population gets older, there's more demand for like cruises to the Caribbean, cruises, to Mediterranean, and cruise ships have issues, health issues especially, and it's become more prevalent over the last few years. But how does that impact the demand for those, cruise lines or those vacations? Are there certain areas in the United States that individuals don't like to vacation to? And is that being driven by information that's coming off of the internet? It was, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but a few years ago, there was a movie came out, and it significantly, they were downgrading or making fun of people that drank Merlot. It's a type of red wine, and it's Merlot grape, and it's a grape that's grown especially in California, in the wine producing areas in Sonoma, Napa, and up and down the coast there. And it significantly decreased the demand for Merlot, and it stayed down for several years. So information, social media, you have these TikTok influencers, you have people on YouTube. It's just Facebook. And so social media is a big influencer with information that helps shift these demand curves upward and downward. And then we want to talk about kind of prices of related goods and services. And there's a big concern right now about just goods and services in general, with the increase in inflation. So individuals are going to start making determinations as prices of some goods go up. They're going to start looking at alternative goods to make their purchases with. Again, remember that one of the three drivers for consumer decisions is opportunity cost. What is the next best option that I can use to spend my money on? So we're looking at, again, I'll go back to the coffee example. If Starbucks raises their coffee level high enough, you're going to have individuals start looking to purchase their coffee at McDonald's, at Dunkin' Donuts, at your local convenience store, your 7-Elevens, your racetrack, convenience mart. So people are going to constantly look at prices of related goods and services. And they get into a couple of specifics when they're talking about prices of related goods and services. And they're talking about complements. And basically what that means is if the price in one goes up, then the demand for the other one tends to fall. And vice versa. As the price goes down, the demand for the other one continues or usually rises. And that is for most goods and services. Now, when they're talking about complements, one of the main things you think about is, and they talk about in the text, is tennis rackets. Price of tennis rackets gets too high, then demand for tennis balls more than likely is going to fall, because if you're not playing tennis, what do you need a tennis ball for? Saw it a few years ago, especially in Southern California, where the price of belonging to a tennis club started to skyrocket. There were not enough public tennis courts, and you started to see a decline in the demand of not only tennis rackets, but tennis balls. So again, complements, as the price of one goes up, the demand for the other one goes down, and vice versa. Price goes down, the demand for the other one goes up. So they move in opposite directions. They also throw out the example of iPhones and AirPods. So there are a lot of things that you can think about that is some kind of a complementary relationship among goods and services. And then they talk about substitutes, and then at that point it's a little different. So rather than moving in opposite directions as a complement, they move in the same direction when you're looking at substitutes. Coffee and tea, Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, substitute goods. Again, you're looking at opportunity costs now of these substitute goods. And had you rather spend, and I'm just making numbers up, had you rather spend $2 for a can of Coke or $1 for a can of Pepsi? Yes, you've got some preferences that you prefer the taste of one or the other, but at some point, does the alternative good and your disposable income outweigh each other, and you start saying, well, okay, I'd rather have 2 cans of Diet Pepsi as opposed to 1 can of Diet Coke, or similar types of situations. It's in the one that I guess that people are I won't say concerned about, but at least it's huge in the news right now is Bud Light. And why, the rationale is why it's in fact affecting the market of Bud Light is goes back to the preference and information shifter. But if that was not even an impact, if Bud Light was $2 a can and Miller Lite was $1 a can, you might still be looking at that. I'd rather have 2 cans of Miller Lite than 1 can of Bud Light. So that's why that when we talk about the supply and demand model, we are looking at prices and quantities and holding everything else equal, because the world in and of itself is so complex, it makes it extremely difficult to investigate or analyze the shifts in supply and demand. So we try to hold things as constant as possible. The next thing is income. And they talk about a normal good. And typically, a normal good, you think of it as a good as income goes up. And remember, from my perspective, disposable income is more important than net income. But as income goes up, the demand for that good or service goes up. As income goes down, the demand for that good or service goes down. Think of jewelry, vacations, high-end automobiles. Hate to pick on Starbucks, but Starbucks coffee. And anything that as you have more income, you are more willing again to go out and purchase that good or service, the more income. So that is a normal good. If you think about an inferior good, as income goes up, demand goes down. And as income goes down, demand goes up. And I think a few years ago, I was on an airplane. I worked at HealthNet Health Plan at the time, and traveling from Baltimore back to San Diego. And I was sitting on a row, and the girl sitting next to me was a young lady that had just graduated, I think from George Washington. But anyway, she'd gone to work for PwC, one of your financial consulting groups. And we were talking about different things, and so this was like midsummer, and she'd graduated in the spring. She'd been on a job a couple of years. And she said, you just don't understand. And even though I did, I guess I was old enough that she didn't think I could remember. But she said, you just don't understand. I was in college. I didn't have a dime to my name. I was paying off college debt, and living hand to mouth. And I was eating mac and cheese and peanut butter and jelly, and just trying to get by. She says, now, working at PwC, I'm on an expense account, and I'm going, doing this and doing that. And she says, my income is just significantly increased. And she says, I haven't had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich since I left college. And she says, I may never eat mac and cheese again. She said, you just get burned out. And it was driven by her income. So as your income rises, as your income rises, the demand for normal good rises. But as your income rises, the demand for inferior goods go down. And again, SpaghettiOs, mac and cheese, peanut butter, just a lot of inferior goods out there that people will start to go away from as their income increases. Demographic characteristics, and I mentioned a few of these earlier. As the population ages, and it is aging, and not only is the population aging, but they're doing studies that families are having fewer and fewer children. And so you've got colleges that universities out there trying to estimate that, okay, with this birth rate at this particular year, what's the enrollment expectations 18 years in the future or 16 years into the future, whatever time horizon they're looking at. So they're trying to figure out, what's going to be the cost of education. How many resources do I need to keep in reserve so that I can provide the goods and services that this population is going to need? Will this university even be in existence in, when this age population gets to college or university level age? So you've got a lot of that going on with demographic characteristics. But if you go back to, and we talked about the healthcare example with younger populations, don't think too much about the benefit plan they have. They don't want to spend any more than they have to on the healthcare benefits. Older population really concerned about what's going to be the impact on their healthcare, on their health status as they really start to age, because it's, they throw out numbers of something like 80% of your healthcare services are, consumed within the last years or the last 6 months of your life. So huge impact on the healthcare environment. You also saw an individual on one of the business channels talking about just with the aging population, you've got a population that's looking at the real estate market, and two things. They were looking for smaller homes, and they were looking for one-story homes because, as they get older, they start having knee and hip and joint and arthritis, and they don't want to have to climb stairs. So again, and they don't want to have to clean house. They don't want to have to take care of. They start moving into a minimalist kind of environment. So looking for smaller homes, looking for single-story homes, and that's going to impact, the demand in the real estate market. Also, retirement villages. You see advertisements for like the over 55 population, and they're talking about the great way of life, live with in an area where they have goods and services, at your fingertips. You don't have to worry about traveling. They have like on-site healthcare. They provide your meals. You get to spend time with individuals your own age. I mean, yada, yada, yada. But again, that's the way the commercials are pitched out there. And then also we talked about the sea cruises, trips to the Mediterranean, especially trips down through the Caribbean. They like being on those cruises. They don't have to worry about driving. They don't have to worry about a hotel room. They're pretty much self-contained. All their food's provided, activities. They've got people going on, leading the tours if, in different places that they dock. Because they found that as individuals get older, they are less adventurous and they're not as interested in going to, I'll say, foreign countries and being on their own. They're more concerned about, and they like to have a guided tour where the bus takes them, everything's paid for, meals are there for you. And that's distinctly different than the younger population. When we were talking about markets, talking about Airbnb, I forgot to bring that up, but that is a market economy. It's bringing buyers and sellers together for vacation rentals, and they find that a lot of Airbnbs, that is a selection that is made by a younger population in greater quantities than an older population. So again, trying to forecast based on demographic characteristics, it's extremely difficult, but there are significant impacts to shifts in the demand schedule or the demand curve for any good or service. And then lastly, we're talking about buyers' expectations. Future prices drive expectations. If you listen to the business channel, they were talking, they'll say, well, stock futures are flat, or stock futures are dropping, or stock futures have risen 200 points. They are basing that on what they think the stock price is, or what they think the Dow Jones is going to be in 90 days forward. So they're looking at interest rates, they're looking at demand, they're looking at all of these shifters and trying to figure out what is going to be the impact on stock, because you're buying stock based on expectations of capital increases, expectations on dividends. And when I say capital increases on stock, you're looking at the price of stock rising. And that's all based on expectations. Also with healthcare, buyers' expectations, you will see huge shifts in demand for certain healthcare services as you come toward the end of the fiscal year. When I worked at HealthNet, a lot of the work we did was based on the TRICARE population. And the TRICARE population it's the healthcare goods and services that the government provides to active duty members and retirees and their families. And especially in the retiree population, the fiscal year ran from October the 1st to September the 30th of the next year. So you would see, because a lot of the plans, you could have deductible if you went traditional, but there were some deductibles that you had to meet. And what you would see is just a huge bump up, especially in pharmaceuticals in the month of September, because everybody was trying to get all their pharmaceuticals paid in September so that they started with a clean slate. They'd already met that deductible, and they're trying to start with this clean slate come the 1st of October. So you see that in healthcare especially. You even see it in the commercial plans where our benefit plans run from January the 1st to December the 31st. So you see a lot of this juggling and jockeying and quantities being demanded at certain price levels, and it's shifting those demand schedules outward and inward based on time of the year. So and then the last thing we'll just talk about buyers' expectations is, as we talked about earlier, iPhones, cellular phones in general, computers, automobiles, everybody jockeying, trying to figure out, even appliances for the home. People don't think about it, but, ranges, refrigerators, washer dryers. There's usually, over the last few years, there's been price increases that went into impact or went into effect at the first of the year. So you will see sales going along all through the year trying to get rid of excess supply. But, how does that shift that demand curve outward and inward as we come toward different points in the year? So that's going to wrap it up on the price shifters. Again, we're talking about demographics, we're talking about expectations, we're talking about income. When we were, got into the normal and inferior goods, talking about prices of related goods, and that goes back to complements and substitutes. Remember, complements, price goes up on one, demand on the other one goes down, and vice versa. If it's a substitute, they both move in the same direction. Price goes up on one, the demand for the other one goes up, and this, and it could shift back. They can shift either way, depending and driven by the price. And then lastly, on your price shifters, just preferences and information. And again, bombarded constantly with new information, and it's how we process that information that helps drive the demand for goods and services. That kind of wraps up the demand shifters. In segment 4, we'll actually get into supply and talk about supply. So I'll see you again in a few minutes. Thanks.